From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Susan Hildreth, and I am the director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And I'm very happy to welcome you here today for our exciting induction of our second class of our 5 national student poets. They are chosen from hundreds of gold and silver poetry award winners from the Scholastic Alliance for Young Artists and Writers competition, and their work is reviewed by a distinguished jury of literary luminaries. This ceremony marks the beginning of their appointment year as literary ambassadors who by their example and words will encourage creative self-discovery and inspire their peers through reading, workshops, and other events during the year. They will also work with poet mentors and serve as a resource for the White House, the U.S. Department of Education, and our host today, the Library of Congress. So they have a big year ahead of them. We've gotten a little time to get to know them this weekend. They're a wonderful group of students. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first poet, and she'll join me on the stage. Sojourner Hebe attends the Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan, where she majors in creative writing. Though she was born in Côte d'Ivoire, please correct my pronunciation, Sojourner, West Africa, her current hometown is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Much of her work involves her search for home, owing to the fact that at age 7 she left her birthplace after the start of the Ivorian Civil War. Her favorite writers include Junot Diaz, Flannery O'Connor, Warsan Shire, and I.A. Sorry, I'm not familiar with that one, but I'm sure that's a great person, and we'll learn from you. When not writing, she enjoys studying anthropology and the French language, and because of her ties with Michigan, she's representing the Midwest. Sojourner, please join me.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Sojourner, and I'm going to be reading 2 poems today. The first one is entitled, "The Physics of Losing a Father." Her father would always be a story, a plantlet zone at the bottom of a lake, Aphathaw. But she's never really seen one. She wonders if fathers are to blame for the lack of vegetation. A man can't die and not leave a note on how to keep the garden growing. Her mother tells her that he loved the huskiness in Billy's voice. He'd come home from work, hold his gin in one hand. Lady day, lady day, lady day. The swaying of his head is a mantra of jazz, held tight in the rain outside. He tells her that he hated the dry season. The harmattan dust triggered his aunt's epilepsy. So she tries to hate these summers, but they aren't the same. These summers that wear floral dresses with Doc Martens. Strange fruit sounds like grandma talking, but somehow it's papa. The seeds in her papaya remind her of her father's childhood. He was a papaya tree climber, a papaya fruit eater. Persephone, 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 stuck in an underworld. She wishes for anemophily, wind pollination for the little black seeds, this strange fruit. She wants to climb like her father and tell him it's okay. Her mother tells her that he never sang his blues. He preferred the color of light in his mouth, the way Casablanca lilies bloomed only in the night. When Ivorian girls are most hungry, for Côte d'Ivoire. I remember my arms entwined with Edwige and the man who broke the necks of chickens, little brown ones which were bred for our sauce arachide, bred for our stomachs that grumbled for the lack of rainy season. The marketplace was breathing, boys kicking dust in soccer balls, me too young to hear the crack of bone, just the pounding of futu in the distance allured me in September when Ivorian girls are most hungry. I forgot to look and see its head drop and told myself the scent of blood was only the scrape on my knee from coconut tree climbing. But there are no long-legged country boys here to hoist me up onto brown bark, just a grandmother's magnolia, which was never meant for climbing. So I've grown accustomed to those sweat-stained, recollection-stained bed sheets, the sound of airplane wings, Mommy Wata searching for a little girl. War is a man with big hands, the silence of a chicken. Thank you. All right.
She did a fabulous job. These young people are they're astounding. Their work is amazing. So our next poet who will be joining us is Michaela Coplin. She is the youngest child in a family that includes 2 Army parents, an ROTC cadet sister, and a farm full of horses. After moving around most of her life, her family settled down in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where she is a student at Carlisle High School, captain of the varsity soccer team, a member of the Model United Nations, the National Honor Society, the Spanish Honor Society, and the editor-in-chief of the literary publication Young Adult Writers and Poets. And I know she's going to have time to fit in her work as a poetry ambassador, and I know poetry has really helped her find herself. So Michaela, please join us here at the podium.
Good morning. I'm Michaela Coplin. I have 2 poems for you guys today. This first one is called Appalachian Altibajos. If you asked me for a translation, I would point to the horizon as it dips and swells in its effort to steady the sky. I would pronounce it in the rustling of the mountains, heads bowed for all that dies in us, as they bury their weariness in the comfort of the valley's waiting arms. I would spell it in the upward winding of trails that lace themselves into the ground, and the tautness of trees swaying between stability and circumstance. I would call it noun, as in the way the wind opens your chest and crucifies you, even as the earth pulls your heart down to her stomach. When you asked me for it in a sentence, I would show you where I stood, afraid that I would fall, and afraid that I would jump, and afraid that I wouldn't, and tell you how I felt the words climbing the steepness of my rocky soul, but feared the reverberating reality of sound. And when at last you turned away, I would whisper to the hills, Te amo, te amo, te amo. Medusa in the mirror. My eyes are older every day, and I think it's because they can see the answer to the question my brain keeps asking, which is a heart more like an odometer or a timer? Because sometimes I feel like it's just counting down the beats, and maybe I'm already in triple digits, and I just don't know it yet, because suicides are slow, and they seep through skin like dye, and sometimes they whisper in my dreams, and I can hear them coiling around my head, and they're fang deep in my skull, because now my migraines pound out messages. Monster, monster, monster. And it feels like they're rooted in my scalp because they're persuasive in my misery, but present in my happiness too. And when they murmur in my ear, you're the best you'll ever be, I'm afraid because it feels true. And maybe I'm anhedonic because I can't remember what childhood tastes like. And I'm starting to think that the only way to punctuate loneliness is in bullet points. Maybe there's a timer in the blackness of my eyes, and maybe you saw it first. Maybe that's why you left. Thank you.
All right, and the final poet that I am introducing, I'm so pleased to introduce Nathan Cummings. Recently had a birthday while he's been back here. It was a special birthday for Nathan. He read his first novel at age 3 and has been searching for ways to tell his own stories ever since. Though his early interest was prose, he discovered poetry while searching for indoor entertainment during one of the many rainy winters in his hometown of Seattle. And he has been hooked ever since. A senior at Mercer Island High School, he serves as editor-in-chief of the school's literary magazine, Pegasus. I think he's also interested in track and field, and he is a reader for 2 national teen literary magazines, Polyphony HS and the Adroit Journal. Nathan.
Best birthday ever. Hi, I'm going to be reading 2 poems for you today. Grandmother's Wrinkles. He cries when his grandmother says hello. The words are angular, stinging sharp syllables, and deep gurgling Ks as if the crags of his mother's accent had erupted, rocky and unnegotiable. Up comes roomy, uninvited love that smells of vinegar and wilted wool. He grasps a hand of matchstick fingers, uneasy, a brittle hand, its hue a few crayons down in the box, still holding some November chill in its palm. Their house is colored autumn woods and maple. Illogical smells are coming from the kitchen. At the table, meat and potatoes give way to exotic fare, chortling broths from fossil bones and misshapen things. The father, big and beaming, and from the veins of this country, born from the dirt that collects in his fingernails, of earth, knowing nothing of old rusting boats, smiles, welcome, wife, mother. He can understand her no better than can his son. It is about privilege that son is told, about emancipation from clenched bellies, which means stories after dinner, long, dark odysseys recorded in no library book. There are stories of thin, fine ribs in rows, of smoke and seawater and vomit, wretches washing up with the driftwood onto virgin shores, of tetanus and trachoma. Sitting on the rug before her, he is stoic. Soon she is snoring with sulphurous teeth, cocooned in a quilt by the fireside. Relieved, he retreats out of reach of skeleton hands, sits on his bed, feels K's still scraping at his ears in the dark, promises himself he will never be old. Transference. In the moment when the tiny body of the squirrel is folded into itself, the 2-year symphony of its rhythms and pulses and tempos is silenced in mid-measure. I want you to consider the energy. Rays of sunlight caught in chains of cellulose, digested, woven into muscle strands, calcified in thin willowy bones in the orbit of the eye, all of it dissipated. Consider the tiny vibration you felt as you race onward, leaving a vague, longitudinal stain, the last strand of solar fire not yet removed from glassine eyes, whose silent judgment follows you past 3 exits and the horizon. Consider the energy, and when you have returned home, traverse your garden, cram an acorn into the soil to take root and spin anew, because you wish you could believe in reincarnation.
Congratulations, and I'm very excited to ask one of our most important partners to join me on the stage, Virginia McInerney, who is the Executive Director of Scholastic's Alliance for Young Writers and Artists, and a great partner on this project.
It's my honor to be here with you today and to welcome you on behalf of our partners, the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities and the Institute for Museum and Library Services. Our esteemed colleagues from the President's Committee have been waylaid by the esteemed traffic of Washington, D.C., but I think they're on their way and they may arrive shortly, and we do hope that we'll get a chance to hear from them. Margot Lyon and Rachel Goslins and Olivia Morgan, a board member of PCAH, whose idea was this was. It's my great honor to introduce our next two student poets. Aileen Dolin wrote her very real story in first grade about a group of cats that lived together in a small town and solved mysteries. Aileen, as you will soon learn, has evolved very significantly, and she still likes fantastical stories, but they're quite a bit more sophisticated now. She's a sophomore at Oakton High School in Vienna, Virginia, and when she was little, she wanted to be the world's first fashion designer, astrophysicist, author. She's been a Girl Scout and has studied ballet, karate, and acting, but reading and writing have always remained constants, and those of us who have gotten to know Aileen over the last couple of days have no doubt that fashion designer, astrophysicist, author is well within her reach. Please welcome Aileen Dolin, who's representing the Southeast region. Aileen?
Right. Hi. As she said, I'm Aileen Dolin, and today I'll be reading 3 poems. 1. Immigrant. I miss the fluid feel of my old name in my mouth, my tongue tracing the soft syllables. It got stolen along the way somehow, though I don't speak in broken English anymore. Add it to the list of items we lost, but have to learn to stop missing. Our bloodlines are still dragging, those threads tangled vaguely in that space between East and West, assigned identities not quite fitting. I know they said the war is over, but I still want to fight. 2. American dream. I press my fingers against the pillow of my stomach, wishing I could feel something sharp, hoping to find ridges of bone. My fingertips stray to my hips, and I pinch at their softness as if that could trim away the excess flesh, as if I could rend my marrows apart, neat and surgical, along the seams of spine and thigh, insides turned to spun dust, like the stuffing of a toy come undone. I stare at the mirror and then the glossy 5-page spread again, my heart aching for a face pale as snowdrifts and all-American blue eyes the size of saucers, the kind I wish I had, set into the faces of blushing girls with gaps between their thighs and lemon blonde hair beckoning to me from the magazines. Leaning in close to the mirror, I pull my eyelids wider, pucker my lips, tug at my skin until it turns sore, in the hopes that this will make me beautiful. 3. Programming error. We pulled out our veins and laid them down on the operating table, watching them unfold like lengths of silver ribbon. The synthetic tissue was still entangled in my hands, bright as butterfly gossamer, insides detached from out, simple as snipping a thread. I couldn't disconnect my wiring, but I could see the cables laid bare, pulsing with color where they joined hips to spine. Once I had wondered if I still had a beating heart, even underneath this metal shell, soft and fragile, like an overripe strawberry. I can list every muscle in the human body, but I've never had warm blood, no map of red lines traced underneath paper-thin flesh. And I've never felt love either, but I can diagnose it. It's just a series of chemical synapses firing, skin-flushing pink with hemoglobin that I don't have. They must have been lying when they said we were perfect. How could something perfect feel so empty? Of course, they'll be angry when they find us here with these blasphemous thoughts in our memory banks. They'll dismantle our limbs and say it was a manufacturing defect, sew us back up again so we forget. I'm not sure how many times they've done it. We'll be beautifully uniform, all our parts in working order, but defective in a different sort of way. Thank you.
Louis Lefer is a senior at St. Stephen's High School in Austin, Texas. He's been playing with words since second grade, but now he translates his love of reading, writing, and speaking, and connecting, and challenging preconceived notions into all aspects of his life. Louis leads a team of more than 20 students and adults and has worked with a wide range of speakers, including poet slam Joaquin Zwataneo. Thank you, Louis. He serves as editor for Proteus, his school's literary magazine. For Louis, the National Student Poets Program is an opportunity to connect through written and spoken poetry with a larger community. Representing the Southwest region, please welcome Louis Lefer.
All right, can everyone hear me? All right, I'm Louis Lefer, and I'm going to read 2 poems for you. The first one is called Rethink Language. Part 1, text message to my girlfriend. Okay. Part 2, conversation with my grandma. Don't talk about the death of language. I, you, we will die, but language does not die. No one can crush that first palm, riding the air, and a 5-fingered salute, greeting, farewell. Because even curled into a fist, that palm feels with the thread of human tongue. Latin, the gasping language, is not dead, but breathing with imperceptible vitality. Salve, it says, not wale, as the valedictorian speaks on. Hardly Antiqua as antiquity lingers, rather ingrained, the roots of a tree, as its branches palm sky, reaching towards a never-ending end. Constant change cometh, constant change comes. Language stays her, an archaic expression of here, passing at times through awkward periods, like the stretched amalgamations lapsing from youth to adulthood. Hair sprouting, lips twitching, eyes blushing. So you see, Grandma, that text message I sent to my girlfriend, it was a rustled leaf, an extended limb, a baby's, girl's, woman's, mother's, grandmother's song, not the death of language, which cannot die. Don't you feel it? The feigned disinterest, concealed excitement, unspoken words. Language, breathing, thinking, asking, living on its own, and that hard-backed, 4-pronged letter K. Don't you understand, standing underneath a history, a story, where words fold into words? Briefly, perhaps momentarily, that swift K surfaces, the result of a gradual, momentous shift in tide, riding from text message to text message, from wave to wave, from soul to soul. Those small, those seemingly meaningless, that alphabetized, unformalized grain is part of the story of the shifting sands of language and composes an entire poem. K? And one more. All right. And then I have one more poem. It's a lot longer, so I'm actually only going to read an excerpt from the very beginning. It's called Parenthetical, and the title's in parentheses. But every single day you pass by, people who are quietly trying to stay standing for a record of 100 heartbeats. You watch, but do not see as they collapse, experiencing what heart monitors in whitewashed hospitals would register as cardiac arrest, the green lifelines plummeting violently, then sitting flat forever, all hope subsiding that someone, anyone, will acknowledge, yes, they do indeed exist, with perhaps a slight nod or at least an accidental shoulder brush. Disabled by your headphones, you do not hear the bodies plunge earthward, surrendering, sinking, soul deep in quicksand. You turn away, unsure of who right then was standing there, unable to spot the limbs flailing, floundering, begging silently for a strong, steady trunk, or maybe, please, just a broken branch to hang onto. Thank you.
It's our great privilege to be able to support these incredibly talented young poets as they start their poetic careers. And it's my great honor right now to introduce to introduce Margot Lyon, who will deliver some comments on behalf of our partner, the founding partner of this National Student Poets Program from the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities. Please welcome Margot Lyon.
Wow, aren't these young people just amazing? How about one big hand for everybody? On behalf of the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities and our chairwoman, First Lady Michelle Obama, I'd like to conclude this event and thank you for joining us here today at the National Book Festival to award our nation's highest honor to these exceptional young poets. Today we recognize 5 national student poets chosen from hundreds of gold and silver poetry award winners in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards by a distinguished jury of literary figures. This ceremony marks the beginning of their appointment year as literary ambassadors, who by their example and words will encourage creative self-discovery and inspire their peers through readings, workshops, and other events during the year. They will also work with poet mentors and serve as a resource for the White House, the U.S. Department of Education, and the Library of Congress. The First Lady had an opportunity to meet these remarkable students last Friday when she welcomed them to the White House and bestowed upon them those pins that you probably have noticed that they will wear during this year of their service. She feels, as we all do at the committee, that we could not have found better ambassadors for her belief that every student should be given the chance to dream big, work hard, and fulfill their promise as the future of this country. In closing, I want to thank our key partners in the National Student Poets Program, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers. And finally, I want to thank especially our President's Committee member, Olivia Morgan, who had the idea for this project and whose enthusiasm and imagination and creativity have carried it along thus far. So I just want to say to you, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of this wonderful festival on the Mall. And come back next year and see who we have to offer you then. Thank you so much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.